Welcome to another Reading Reddit live stream highlights video, guys. We got some juicy Reddit stories for you in this video. Am I the a-hole for postponing our wedding because my fiance wants to have pictures of her late husband in it? Am I the a-hole for refusing to change bikinis after my husband had asked me to wear a thong? Am I the a-hole for confessing to my wife that she's torturing me after she got assaulted? There is an update to it, which is why I picked it. Am I the a-hole for telling a guy the real reason I wasn't dating him was that he was an extremely picky eater? Am I the a-hole for secretly cheating on our vegetarian diet that my wife made our family do? I exposed my aunt after she claimed I was faking my disability for attention. She then ends up attacking me and putting me in the hospital. Am I the a-hole? I don't know how you could be the a-hole in that situation. Am I the a-hole for blaming my family for my stalker finding and essaying me? Am I the a-hole for not telling my fiance that my late partner was a man? And this is our last story. It also has an update. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to follow or subscribe there, as well as if you want to be here live on the stream, go follow me on Twitch. Am I the a-hole for postponing our wedding because my fiance wants to have pictures of her late husband in it? My fiance and I have been together for about 3 years. We got engaged 6 months ago. We were doing some planning and she mentioned, "Where do you think late husband's name picture should go?" I was confused and asked her to clarify. She said she wants her late husband's picture at the wedding. She went into more detail at my request. She wants one of the bridesmaids to hold his picture during the ceremony, as well as having his pic on our table. And when taking pictures, she wants to hold him in most pictures. I told her that I didn't want that, and while I understand he's important to her, I'd feel uncomfortable with his pictures in our wedding, especially when they're so prominent. We got into a fight and she yelled, "I can't believe you're jealous. He's effing dead. What do you think I'm going to F him at our wedding?" I decided to postpone the wedding, and honestly, I'm thinking of calling it off altogether. I think I have to go with not the a-hole because nobody would want that. I don't think there's a human being on planet who would be okay with having another person be a part of their wedding like that. I'm all for having respect for the person who died so that you could marry the person that you're about to marry, but involving them in your wedding is too far. Involving them in your wedding screams, I'm not over it yet and I haven't properly healed from it. This was very close to a needs more information. I would love to know like their ages, how long it's been. Not that that would really change the verdict, but I think it would help to understand the context more. But with the context we have, I feel very confident with not the a-hole. If she would have been like, "Hey, I would like to put a picture of him on a chair at the front so he can be there with us," I would be like, all right, weird, but sure, if that's what you need. But to be like, I want him in my wedding pictures, I need him to have like a dedicated table or whatever, like that's weird. Am I the a-hole for confessing to my wife that she's torturing me after she got assaulted? I, 25 male, have been married to my wife, 26 female, for 4 years. We've been dating since we were teens. We are childhood friends. At this point, we are together for like a decade. This all started a month ago. I went to my company trip. My boss urged me to attend the trip because it will help me learn more and it's a golden opportunity for me. So I told my wife and she said, yes, I should go. It's just for a week. A few days before my departure, my wife said she's going to attend a party hosted by her friends. I said she shouldn't attend. She got mad and asked me why I am restricting her. You see, my wife has become quite an alcoholic in the past few months. It has become a problem for both of us. So I said, if you drink too much, I won't be around to help you. She kept saying she will be fine, but I was adamant. And finally, she said she won't attend, and I trusted her. I went with my boss, and after 3 days, my wife called me. I couldn't pick up her call, but when I checked my phone, I saw so many calls and a text from her. And when I did, I immediately called her, and she kept yelling at me and said, "Come back right now. Come back right now." I panicked as well, and I cut my trip short and went back to see her. When I arrived, she hugged me like never before and kept crying and crying. It took a long time, but she told me she was R-worded. I asked her about the details, and she told me she was R-worded by a bunch of guys after she got drunk. Till this date, I don't know who these guys are. I asked her multiple times, but she said she doesn't want to tell me. I asked her to press charges and she said no. It will ruin her life even more. That's so sad that this is how people feel about it, but not telling them who the guys are is just like raising a question mark in my mind. This is going on for a month now, but a week ago, she went full on crazy mode. She is basically glued to me. Even during a shower or bathroom, I see her everywhere. She went as far as locked our house from inside. I talked to my boss and explained and gave me some time to fix it all. Yesterday, I told her she's going too far. She had locked me and herself in our bedroom and didn't let me go anywhere. When I asked her why she is doing this, she said she's scared that I will abandon her. She hugs me so tight, even I feel uncomfortable, and when I had enough, I said that she's torturing me. You don't tell me anything. I am trying to help you, but you don't care. After I said this, she's crying nonstop, and if this goes on, it's going to cost me my job. I won't even be able to feed myself, forget about feeding her. But the way she is, I think I went too far. Did I say something I shouldn't have? I don't understand anything at this point. Do I think it's okay that OP is literally a prisoner in his own house? No, but I also think the way he's writing this, I'm not getting the vibe that he's being super sympathetic to the fact that his wife had like literally the worst thing happen to her that could happen to her other than just like getting straight up murdered. I almost want to label this need more info because he jumped a huge gap of explaining what they've done to heal or like how he's pushed his wife to go to therapy or like address the trauma. It sounds a little bit like he's doing the man thing where he kind of is like, oh, you just need to like report to the police. Yeah, police don't help with this, but I don't know why she wouldn't tell husband who they are. That's the part that I don't get. I don't want to be that person that's like boy cries wolf, but I could totally see this story going in a direction that she got drunk, hooked up with somebody, feels guilty about it, is lying to her husband, and now this is stemming from like a if he knows he's gonna abandon me type of thing. But I want to trust her. Like if you said that this was the case, then that's the case. But I think you guys are on the same level that I am, where I get the not reporting it to the police because usually they don't do jack shit about it. Her being so secretive about it is really curious to me. That's insane to tell your wife that after what she went through, she's traumatized and you're like, wow, you don't care about me trying. Sad face. I agree. That's why if I had to put any label on this, I would go with everyone sucks here. Like I don't think the wife is handling this well, but I also don't think the husband is handling this well either. I question why she's so secretive about it. It's your decision if you want to press charges or not, but that's the person you trust the most, and I feel like she could share what happened. Doesn't excuse the way he handled it though. He should be offering therapy. That's kind of how I feel, Cree. I don't think the wife gets a choice on what her trauma response is. Absolutely. I'm just saying there is an argument for the trauma response more being around abandonment. I'm open to the story going any certain way. I could see how people read this and they're like, the wife is suspicious here. She has an alcohol problem. They talked about it and she told OP that she wasn't going to this party. I would go into the situation trusting her, but I see why somebody could listen to this and be like, oh, there's something hanky-panky going on. There is an update here. So I'm posting again because I want advice. It turns out the party hoster was a guy she was having an affair with for the past 5 months. She revealed this all information in our couples counseling. She's undergoing through individual counseling, psychology treatment for her trauma, and treatment for severe alcohol problem. What she said in counseling was that she met a guy at a bar and she was lured by his charm and they would make out and do other things. But when she went to his party, he invited a bunch of guys she never saw and they did things to her I don't want to speak about or explain. And what she told me without a counselor is that she's coming clean and doesn't want anything to do with him or anyone. She realized that all other men just wants to exploit her vulnerability and I'm the only man that truly cares for her and she would never ever look at any other man, only me. But you did look at another man. We had a family meeting where my parents and siblings and hers came over to my house and they said that my wife made a mistake and is going through a very tough time. She has changed and learned from her mistake and I am a great man for taking care of my wife and I should never think about divorce. I was thinking about divorce and I only shared this with my colleague who has become my best friend over time. And after I vented and I'm embarrassed to say that I cried in front of her, she said, it's best for me to live alone my whole life than living with her. I asked strangers here for advice like what should I do? Should I accept her because she changed her ways and take care of her or just divorce and move on? As you were getting the worst of both worlds. No, that's literally what I was thinking. Look, man, someone might watch this and think I'm a terrible person. If she's been cheating on you for 5 months, maybe I'm a terrible person, but I think he should get the divorce. The second she cheats, all responsibility he had towards his wife went out the window. When she disrespected the sanctity of their marriage, that gives him the out that he needs no matter what. Am I the a-hole for not telling my fiance that my late partner was a man? I, 28 male, lost my fiance 4 years ago in a car accident. He and I were both 25 at the time and had been together since we were 19. If soulmates are real, he was mine. He was stubborn. He preferred a way earlier bedtime than I did and was a major homebody, and I loved all of it. He would stay up with me until he was sure I fell asleep, and weekly movie theater outings planned by him became a thing like a month into us meeting. I am a fundamentally different person both because I met him and because of my grief. I was shown what real love and effort and care feels like. I also don't talk about him. I go to therapy once a week. Otherwise, it's silence on that topic from me. He lives on in me in the ways I try to emulate him. I practice the patience he had that I always struggled to find. I go after career-related opportunities that scare me because I know he would encourage me to. Sometimes I let myself stay in bed because I know he'd be gentle with me and let me do that too. But I don't talk about him, and I probably never will. I'll make the occasional, "Oh, X would have loved this" comment when I'm with friends who knew him well. With strangers, nothing. My friends and family respect that as well. I'm engaged again. My fiance, 31 female, obviously knows I was engaged before. I pretty much told her my last partner passed away and I don't talk about it. I don't use social media in really any capacity anymore, but she happened to stumble upon an old Instagram profile of mine recently and saw him heavily featured. This led to her accusing me of purposefully keeping this from her. I don't really see why his gender matters, and I told her so. She said I've broken her trust. Times like these are when I long for the life I was living for, but grief fucked up my brain, so I'm not sure if I'm being insensitive. Edit, she knew I'm bisexual. The only thing she didn't know was that my fiance was a man. I think it would be a little bit of like a surprise shoddy, but I don't think you should feel like your trust has been broken. Also, why does it matter? It shouldn't matter. That's not really trust being broken. That's a certain aspect of it not being communicated to you, which also he has already set the expectation that that thing would not be communicated to you. I'm just trying to decide whether or not there's like homophobia involved in here. Not saying that this changes my verdict, but I also am not a huge fan of him not talking about it with the person that he's literally going to spend the rest of his life with. That seems unhealthy to me. I don't think I would want to be in a relationship with somebody who something terrible has happened to them and they don't feel comfortable opening up about that thing to me. We got a long, juicy update for you guys. Yesterday, I had an emergency therapy session because I was spiraling and didn't feel prepared to tackle the upcoming conversation with my fiance without one. It was hard but necessary as I was finally honest about just how much I was compartmentalizing my grief. It laid the foundation for where I'd like to go moving forward. Now I have to put it in the legwork. The few hours between my therapy appointment and my fiance getting off work was evidence of just how avoidant I've become. It was a conversation we needed, but definitely not one I wanted. When we finally sat down to talk, I asked her to start us off by telling me exactly what was bothering her about the whole situation. She said because I had come out to her in a casual way, the way I come out to anyone by mentioning it early on when it seems natural to bring it up, she didn't realize how serious I was, and this made her look at me differently. She apologized for that and suggested that if I told her more about him now, it might be an easier pill for her to swallow. There's the she's slightly homophobic argument. There could also be the argument, I know a lot of people don't like being with bisexual people because now the pool of like being jealous of people spreads a lot bigger. If you're dating a bisexual man, now you're quote unquote jealous of the guys and girls. So when he told her that he was bisexual, maybe she like dumbed down what that meant and was just like, oh, he's just a little curious. But then learning that he was engaged and about to be married to a man, now in her head, she's like, oh, this isn't just curiosity. This is like actual interest. I tried, but there was this knot in my stomach the entire time I tried to pick a place to start. And maybe this is me being cruel, not giving her the benefit of the doubt, but it just didn't feel right. She hadn't come and said, I was shocked because I realized how little I knew about this time in your life. Would you be open to talking about it now? Instead, it felt like, tell me what you saw in him so I can attempt to rationalize your orientation. I told her I needed some time, so she went to stay elsewhere for the weekend. A longtime good friend of mine came over this morning. I think the combination of anonymously talking more openly about my partner here, as well as being more open with my therapist, helped remind me of how joyous and cathartic it could be. I don't know the exact catalyst, but I do know I spilled my guts. We talked for hours about things I haven't told anyone in years. I expressed how nervous I was about possibly living alone again, and I was told that I didn't ever have to worry about that. That an SOS text message would be all it took for me to have company if I needed it. Same goes for all my friends and family. I'm so lucky I have an incredible support system. 5 minutes into that hours-long conversation, I already knew. The trust, the security, and love I felt made room for this newfound openness. The absence of any one of those marks a relationship dead on arrival and is why I felt physically ill trying to share his memory with her. I truly wish her the best. I think going our separate ways will be good for both of us. We weren't getting what we needed from from each other. She's supposed to be coming back tomorrow, so we'll have the talk then. I have lots of work to do, but for tonight, I get to be reminded of what safety feels like. I didn't say it in the previous story, but I lost my fiance 4 years ago in a car accident. Not saying that isn't adequate time to heal, but 4 years to get over the death of your fiance who you are going to marry and be with for the rest of your life. Get in a new relationship, foster that new relationship to a point where it's healthy to get married to them and then get engaged to them all in that 4-year span seems a little fast to me. I totally forgot to mention that. I don't know if you guys will agree with that. That was something I was thinking about. There is one more edit. Please see this comment where I elaborate on the conversation she and I had. There seems to be misunderstanding where I blame her for everything because she didn't perfectly respond to the situation. Two things can be true. I wasn't open. I am largely accountable for the problem in this relationship, and I never should have entered it if I wasn't ready. She also said ignorant things. I'm not angry about it, and it's certainly not the sole reason we're breaking up. It's just another reason on the pile of reasons why this isn't sustainable. Me still not feeling comfortable enough to share with her does not equal me blaming her for everything or even the majority. It was just the final nail in the coffin between maybe we can make this work with a lot of effort and this needs to end now. All right, let's see this comment. Is it possible that you had predetermined that it would go badly and made a self-fulfilling prophecy out of your anxieties? No, I was nervous, but I went in with an open mind. I knew I likely needed to end the relationship or at least pump the brakes, but that doesn't mean I went in guns a-blazing against her. I wasn't showing up in the way I needed to. We hadn't started planning the wedding yet, and I knew now that it would likely be much farther down the line than originally anticipated if things went well during our talk. I had a lot I needed to work through, and I didn't know if she would want to stay for that. Were your uncomfortable feelings caused by something concretely biphobic that she actually said, or by your own nerves, which caused you to interpret anything she said in the worst possible light? She said she didn't realize how serious I was about being bisexual when I had already come out to her. She also said that made her look at me differently and apologized for that. To me, there's only one interpretation of that. I came out to her early on, but she didn't take any of my sexuality as fact until she saw me with a man, and now she looks at me differently. And despite just devoting a paragraph to that conversation, it was much longer than that in person. I asked her to elaborate, and she doubled down on what she said. She was apologizing to me for seeing me differently and asking me to share memories of my late fiance to make this an easier pill to swallow. The pill to swallow wasn't my engagement, and it wasn't her lack of knowledge about it. The pill to swallow was, very specifically, the fact that she now saw me differently because I was in a serious long-term relationship with a man. Did you communicate this discomfort to her? Did you ask her how she was feeling? Yes and yes. Like I said, long conversation where I opened the floor to her first and then asked clarifying questions. Is it possible your feelings could be the result of clash between your avoidant nature and being forced to confront the problem? And her not having the perfect answers validated your feelings and desire to run again. OP, I didn't need perfect answers. I've been imperfect all throughout this relationship. We're here because I've been avoidant and messy and human. I am at fault here big time for not being open from the start, and I extend grace to her for having to put up with that. I'm sorry I didn't have this conversation sooner and that I jumped into something I wasn't ready for. What I needed was any shred of evidence that her problems with all of this stemmed from my lack of openness, as opposed to him being a man suddenly forcing her to take my sexuality seriously. I didn't get that, and I'm not even really angry at her for that. I don't understand why people are acting like I'm being hostile towards her. We're just not compatible. That's another reason to add to the pile. I'm not going to go into our next conversation blaming her for everything. I'm not going to reiterate how it made me feel and encourage her to take bisexuality serious from the jump though. But that's just one part of a much larger talk where I will take accountability and apologize for wasting her time when I couldn't give her all of mine. This story kind of turned into not an am I the a-hole, but more him just like talking out his journey and having Reddit help guide him through the journey. Am I the a-hole for telling a guy the real reason I wasn't dating him was that he was an extremely picky eater? I, 28 female, met this guy, Jake, 30 male, on a dating app. He seemed like a good match, funny, smart, we had some common interests. After a couple weeks of texting, we decided to meet up for dinner. For context, I'm a sous chef, and I come from a culture where food is a huge part of life. Sharing meals and trying new dishes are essential to me, not just because of my job, but because it's part of how I connect with others. Our first date was at a nice Italian restaurant. That's when I first noticed something was off. Jake spent a ridiculous amount of time asking the waiter about every single dish. When it was finally time to order, he settled on plain pasta with butter. No sauce, no toppings, just noodles and butter. It struck me as odd, but I shrugged it off, thinking maybe he just wasn't feeling adventurous that night. Then we went out again and I suggested sushi. Jake made a face and said he doesn't eat seafood or anything that's uncooked. So we ended up at a diner instead. Once again, he interrogated the waiter about every item on the menu before finally ordering a plain cheeseburger with nothing on it. Just meat, cheese, and bread. This was starting to become a pattern. Over the next few dates, it became clear that Jake was extremely picky, not because of allergies or a medical condition like ARFID, but simply because he refused to try anything familiar. He avoided sauces, spices, vegetables, basically anything that wasn't super basic. Every meal turned into a challenge, and he even made faces or comments about dishes I enjoyed, which started to feel disrespectful considering my background. The breaking point came when I invited Jake to a potluck dinner hosted by one of my colleagues. It was a big event with lots of homemade dishes from various cultures, exactly the kind of thing I love. When we arrived, Jake immediately looked uncomfortable. As we moved through the buffet line, he barely put anything on his plate. He kept making comments like, "This looks weird," or "I don't trust food that has too many ingredients." I was embarrassed, especially since these were my colleagues and friends who had spent a lot of time preparing these dishes. Jake picked at his food and eventually whispered to me that he was going to leave and grab some fries from a fast food place nearby because he couldn't eat this stuff. He left the potluck early, leaving me to make excuses for his absence. That was when I realized this wasn't going to work. Food is such a significant part of my life and my culture, and I need someone who can share that with me. So I decided to end things with Jake. To avoid hurting his feelings, I told him it was because I wasn't ready for a serious relationship right now. But Jake wouldn't let it go. He kept texting and calling, insisting that he deserved to know the real reason. After a week of him pestering me, I finally told him the truth, that his extremely picky eating habits were a major issue for me, and I couldn't see a future where food wasn't a constant point of tension. He was livid. He accused me of being shallow and said it was ridiculous to end things over something as trivial as food. He told me I was making a big mistake and that I was missing out on a great relationship over something that shouldn't even matter. Now I'm left wondering, was I the a-hole for telling him the real reason I didn't want to date him? I'm not saying you can't be a picky eater, but you can't be a picky eater and be an asshole about it. You can sit there and be like, "Oh, I don't eat this. I don't like the taste. It's just how I am." But you can't be like, "Oh, you're eating that," or like, "Oh, this has too many ingredients." It's honestly embarrassing for you to be that much of a child at the age of 30. Even if you don't like it, can't just be like, "Oh, well, let me let other people enjoy it." I still think it's okay, no matter what, for her to be like, "Hey, food is a big part of my life, and therefore I need someone who also thinks food is a big part of their life." But even more so when that person is almost against that lifestyle. Am I the a-hole for secretly cheating on our vegetarian diet that my wife made our family do? I, 38 male, love my family and my wife, 35 female, and I have never been the type to do anything like this before. 12 months ago, my wife converted to a new religion, which included her giving up eating meat. The whole family, me and our 2 young boys, were supportive of this, and we held a vegetarian-only dinner that night as a little sign of support. Life continues for another 8 months, basically unchanged. The boys and I eat meat, and my wife doesn't. However, things start to change around that 8 to 10 month marker. Can't remember exactly. Basically, along with not eating meat, my wife now no longer wanted to be around it. This wasn't the only thing. Things continue to progress. Basically, my wife started to replace things in the house with substitutes. First, the pork in the house was swapped out for jackfruit. Eggs were swapped out for substitutes like just egg. Shirts were only bought from clean brands like plant-based clothing, and deodorants were swapped out for deodorant pills like Go Scentless. You get the idea. Okay, so this isn't even just diet. This is like lifestyle. To say this was creating a rift would be an understatement. And eventually I brought up to our wife that, again, while we 100% support her in her decisions around these things, I didn't think it should change things for the boys and me, unless of course they wanted it. Wife argued that her values have changed and that being around some of this stuff was really hard for her and wanted us to support her. For the next 2 to 3 months, the house was a place of pretty high tension. It had gotten so bad that the boys have friends bringing them meat from their houses since it was now completely gone from ours. Anyway, about a week ago, my wife went away on a few day long business trip, meaning I was watching the boys Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Basically, and I'm a bit ashamed to type this out, but the boys and I mostly ate meat basically every chance we got. This was all fine and dandy. The boys and I had a great time until my wife returned home and it somehow slipped out what we had done. I have never seen her so disappointed in us. After putting the boys to bed, we argued for hours about how I was setting a poor example for the boys, that I should respect the decisions made by my wife, even if they were tough and inconvenient. It's hard to argue back because I can see her side, but it boils down simply to just, I don't want to be vegetarian/vegan and neither do the boys. Am I the a-hole? I'm confused, like, hey man, this is a marriage. You make decisions together. Why is your wife making these big decisions? I'm all for people going on a plant-based diet if that's what they think is right, but don't put it on others. Why is this so weighted towards what the wife wants and not at all what the kids or what OP wants? I'm going with not the a-hole, bro. You got to stand up for yourself and be like, hey, if you want to do that, that's fine. Me and my boys, we're chomping on some meat, bro. bro. Am I the a-hole? I exposed my aunt after she claimed I was faking my disability for attention. She then ends up attacking me and putting me in the hospital. I, 31 female, was born with a severe genetic disorder called EDS, hypermobility type. The illness varies greatly from person to person. Most can lead relatively normal lives with some pain and problems. EDS is essentially a group of disorders caused by defective collagen in the body. This results in a host of issues, including joint hypermobility, which causes joints to be so loose and unstable that they dislocate or subluxate, partially dislocate constantly. Severe joint and soft tissue issue pain due to the constant dislocations and the resulting damage to the joints, among other things. Extreme chronic fatigue, skin that bruises easily and in thin areas can even tear. Dizziness when standing up because my blood pressure drops rapidly. About 11 years ago, my disorder worsened significantly, and I was forced to start using a wheelchair to get around, as walking more than 100 feet became extremely dangerous for me. The risk of failing due to a hip dislocation was high. In the last 3 years, I upgraded to an electric wheelchair because pushing a manual chair became too painful. For reasons I don't fully understand, my aunt, 54 female, has an extreme dislike for disabled people, especially those in wheelchairs who can still move their legs. For 11 years, whenever we were alone, she treated me worse than a dog and insisted that my disorder was completely fake and made up. She claimed I was lying about it because I wanted all the attention focused on me, believing I was jealous of anyone else receiving attention, especially her. I tried to confront her about it and talk things out, but since I was already overwhelmed by my condition, I ended up keeping my comments to myself. Since I'm not confrontational and don't see her often throughout the year, I didn't want to burden anyone with it, especially as I already had to ask for so much help from the people around me, and my parents were exhausted from all the doctor's visits during that time. So for the past 11 years, I've just ignored every comment she made when we were alone because I had grown accustomed to it. I absolutely didn't care what she thought at this point and knew she was just being an idiot. That was until things really escalated last week when I went to visit my aunt for our yearly family dinner. She was the one who organized the dinner this year. All was going well until she drank more than usual and became a lot snarkier towards me in front of the family. This caused some family members to call her out and tell her it was inappropriate and uncalled for. She silently fumed, giving me death stares afterward. My parents noticed this and kept an eye on her. Unfortunately, at some point, I went into the kitchen on the other side of the house to take a break from my aunt's stares and take my medication in private. My aunt followed me into the kitchen and closed the door behind her. I knew this wasn't good since she was clearly intoxicated, so I discreetly started recording the incident on my phone. Since the door was closed and we were far from the others with many people talking loudly in the other room, no one could hear us, even if I screamed. My aunt began asking if I was enjoying being an attention hog and ruining her dinner by humiliating her. I slowly tried to maneuver my wheelchair toward the door while apologizing, telling her that wasn't my intention. At that point, I tried to say what she wanted to hear so I could get to safety. She started raising her voice, accusing me of being jealous of her success and faking my disorder out of laziness. She began calling me every name in the book and yelling nonsense at me. I started to think she might be having a mental breakdown and began crying, pleading with her to let me go. Realizing I needed to get out of there, I decided I couldn't do so in my chair, so I tried to get out of it. Unfortunately, she turned violent and pushed me back into the chair hard. She screamed that she wasn't done yet and that liars like me needed to be taught a lesson. She started hitting me in the face as hard as she could, which dislocated my jaw. Then she tried to pull me out of the chair, dislocating my arm, but I fought back, so she failed. She then somehow managed to push my chair over on its side, causing my foot to get stuck behind the footrest. Luckily, my dad, noticing my absence and that my aunt was also gone, became concerned and began searching for me. In what world does this person think they're the a-hole? I agree, Ezzy. What the fuck? My father later told me I let out such a blood-curdling scream that it was audible throughout the entire dining room, prompting him and my mom to sprint toward the sound. At this point, I was starting to lose consciousness from the pain. I remember my dad bursting through the door. From what I was told, my dad body slammed my aunt, his younger sister, and punched her to make sure she stayed down. My mom screamed for someone to call 911, which my nephew did immediately. My mom then got me free from the wheelchair and tried to recall her first aid training. Meanwhile, my dad pinned my aunt to the floor while my aunt's husband stood there in complete shock, not knowing what to do. The police and the ambulance arrived and they put my aunt in cuffs. She screamed at my dad, asking how he dared to lay hands on a woman, no less his sister. My uncle then tried to defend my aunt, claiming they didn't know what had happened and that I could have tipped over myself after trying to attack her. Ah yes, the woman who is in the wheelchair is trying to attack the able-bodied person. I'm sure that happened. He insisted his wife could never do something like this and that it had to be provoked. He apparently said much worse things, but my parents won't specify what exactly. I regained consciousness at this point, likely due to receiving some strong pain medication. It's still a blur because the medication left me disoriented. I was taken away by the ambulance while my aunt was taken to jail. At the hospital, I was found to have multiple fractured ribs, a dislocated arm, and a dislocated jaw. I also suffered a concussion from the punches, but the worst damage was my foot, which turned out to be broken. I also have cuts and scrapes everywhere because my skin is so fragile. Fortunately, the injuries weren't severe enough to require surgery, but with my disorder, it will take at least 10 weeks in a cast, followed by physical therapy, although my ankle will likely be permanently damaged. I feel guilty for ruining someone's life. I've gotten multiple voicemails from different numbers with her screaming how I've ruined her life and probably their finances after this. My uncle's trying to save his own reputation by sticking to my aunt's side, but that's short-lived since he wants a divorce. A few family members and them are making me doubt if I've done something wrong here, so that's why I'm asking if I'm the a-hole. I'm putting this in afterwards because it somehow got deleted, but I ended up sharing the footage on a private group page for our family, for the whole family to see, but it might have been wrong. But seeing the reactions, it was probably the right thing. After that, shit hit the fan for her, so that's why she's even more angry. I'm gonna read this edit just because it seems relatively relevant. It's not really an update. A lot of people don't understand that when you're badly disabled, at least in my case, that people will constantly tell you you're at fault for things. That, plus traumatic experiences, have made it really difficult for me to even stand up for myself or know when I'm truly at fault for things. It's hard for me to discern when people are just trying to basically gaslight me into believing I'm the cause of the issue. So I hope people will understand a bit better why my mind makes me think I might be at fault for things. Some questions answered. Yes, we're getting a restraining order and pressing charges. The thought of her coming after me is too much. For people wondering how I was given pain meds when I wasn't conscious, as I said, I think I regained it due to pain meds, but I don't remember a lot of what happened due to the pain. But I'll ask my parents when I got the meds. My parents are reluctant to talk about how they found me and what happened because they'd rather have those memories buried instead of haunting me. The footage was handed over to the police and is backed up on multiple platforms. I'm currently thinking I'm going to sue since I have insurance that covers legal costs for me. We already said it. Not the a-hole at all. Honestly, W for the dad putting an absolute beat down on that aunt for her. Am I the a-hole for blaming my family for my stalker finding and essaying me? I'm 26 female, and a few months ago, I married a wonderful man in the world, Liam, 28 male, and we bought a house together just after he proposed. He is kind and honest, compassionate, empathetic, and the most genuine person I have ever met. He makes me feel safe. Unfortunately, I have a dark past that I've tried to leave behind. Liam knows about it and has been my rock as I'm going to therapy. My ex was extremely abusive and manipulative. He hit me, threw things at me, and essayed me multiple times via coercion, stealing, and drugging me with sleeping pills. After I left him, I did everything I could to erase any trace of myself online, hoping to start fresh and protect myself. I still don't have any social media. Things were going well until recently. My mother is very active on social media, particularly Facebook, where she shares everything about our lives. Without my permission, she posted multiple pictures of our new home, inside and out, publicly on her profile. I had specifically told her not to share these photos, but she insisted that it was her way of celebrating our new milestone. A few weeks later, 2 months ago, my ex found me. He started stalking me again in person, and despite several restraining orders, things escalated. He eventually broke into our home and assaulted me, physically and sexually. I had a dislocated jaw, my femur was fractured, and I had internal bleeding. There is DNA evidence, and he will likely go to jail. During that event, he told me I was a ruined whore who deserved it, and that I brought it on myself because I was a stupid C word. I've been in a horrible place since then, and I blamed my family, especially my mom, for this. I believe that if she hadn't posted those photos, he wouldn't have found me. My family, however, insists that I'm being unreasonable and that I'm just looking for someone to blame. They say that my ex would have found me anyway and that I can't put this on them. I'm questioning everything. I feel like I'm losing my mind because deep down, I believe that they are partially responsible for what happened, but I'm starting to think that they may be right. That I shouldn't blame anybody but him and myself. I think that he's right and that I moved on too quick and too loud. I feel like a mess and it feels like therapy isn't helping. I'm going with not the a-hole. This man sounds persistent. This man sounds like he's been looking for you and would have found you eventually. But the fact that your mom disrespected your wishes like that is unacceptable. I don't think that's a justification at all. I don't think your family should be on your mom's side defending her. They should be on your side saying, like, whether that's the reason or not, that put you in immense amounts of danger. For your mom to to disrespect your wishes of, hey, something terrible happened to me, and the person that did those things could find me because you want to be a Facebook mom is unacceptable. You should not only cut off contact with your mom, but your entire family. And also get a gun. I don't care what your beliefs are on like gun control or anything. Get something that you can defend yourself with. Putting your daughter's life in danger for a stupid Facebook post is ridiculous. Even if you're just like, my daughter got a house, I'm so proud of her, and you don't post where it is, you can brag without taking photos of it and shit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to change bikinis after my husband had asked me to wear a thong? Before we get into the last story, if you enjoyed this video and want to see future videos, hit that subscribe button. On top of that, if you're trying to dive deeper into our community, I highly recommend joining our Discord. Links to those are in the description. Feel free to tag me once you're in there. Okay, so yesterday, my husband's birthday, we're both 22. You're married at 22? I couldn't imagine that. That sounds awful to me. And he wanted to have some friends over for some pool time. Thought it was just going to be a chill time. I'd cook for them, etc. Yesterday afternoon, he asked if I could wear a thong bikini because he wanted to show me off to his friends. Ah, yes. This is my wife in the trophy case. Now, I have no problem wearing something that revealing when it's just the two of us, but I always opt for more coverage when we have company. But I feel bad saying no to him on his birthday, so I told him that I'd do it. So I put it on about a half hour before his friends arrived, and he was thrilled, which made me feel a little bit better temporarily. But then he asked if I could take the bra pads out. Why do you want your buddies like leering at your wife? What, dude? I told him I really didn't want to do that, but he asked a few more times and I relented. But I was getting upset at this point. His friends come over, I'm bringing them food and beers, and about an hour in, my husband comes inside while I'm in the kitchen and says he doesn't like how much his friends are looking at me. Well, if it isn't the consequences of your actions, bro, and that he wants me to change into a different bathing suit. I told him that I wasn't going to change, that he wanted me in next to nothing, even though I didn't want to be, and that's what he was going to get. His friends left a few hours later, and we got into a big fight. We're somewhat resolved now, but I just feel weird. I guess I'm looking for unbiased opinions. Am I the a-hole here? Any ideas what I should do going forward if something like this happens again? Divorce your husband? This might be really mean of me to say, but this just sounds like a we got married before the age of 22 type of marriage. This sounds exactly like what you signed up for when you got married when you were still almost children. I can't believe that, bro. I'm going with not the a-hole. There's a lot of disrespect that your husband's showing you here, like treating you like a trophy and then doing what he asks and then being punished for doing what he asks. The man you're married to is literally a child. Thank God I'm not in this situation. Thank God. I ain't religious, but sometimes you just gotta thank God, you know? If you're looking for more messy Reddit stories, click the link at the top of the description or click one of the videos popping up on the screen right now. The members of our community love these videos, and I'm sure you will too.